go a little wider. Brings ball back for Marshall. The footwork. Benji Marshall. Now the speed. The footwork again. Away from Peachy. Passes without looking. Away for Richards. Back to Fitzhenry. That is as good as you will see.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gents, to another episode of the SuperCoach Tragics podcast. I'm your host, Dan, coach of Badonkadonk. If you're having trouble finding my team name in the app, guys, I suggest you scroll down as low as you can possibly go, and you will find my team very low on the rankings. I think about changing my team name to emphasize the bad in Badonkadonk. I reckon. I think it's as bad as it gets, but I'll stop talking about myself now and move on to our first panelist. Glenn, how was your week, mate?
Oh, yeah, not much better, bro. I went 897 and went up 5K, but I mean, from 50K, that's not too much to brag about.
Yeah, I think you still beat me, mate. Another shocker. So, also tonight we have Brod. Brod, how was your week, mate?
Oh, well, I doubled Glenn's. I went up 10,000 places. Still ranked lower than Glenn, but you know, I'll take a win. Now it's obviously hard, but we'll all get there.
That's it. Next up, we have Ross. I hope your week was better than mine, mate. How was yours?
Yeah, not too bad. Got 956, which isn't too bad. Moved up about 22,000 places to about 28,000. Not great, but with the way scoring's going at the moment, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I'm not sort of too far away.
Yeah, nice, mate. Nice. And last but not least, from SuperCoach 360, we have Timmy O. Timmy O, how'd you go, mate?
Very well, thanks, boys. Well, better than week one. I had a 907, I think it was, which put me from 60,000th up to 50,000. And, on the up and up is about all the only positive I can take out of it. It's all, I'm sure we're all in a similar boat. We went with a strategy, and unfortunately for me, that strategy just didn't work. So it's time to take note of what everybody else is talking about, do a bit of research, and back to the drawing board, start again, cop it on the chin, and let's go.
Yeah, well, my score was 849, another terrible week, but I managed to still go up about 500 places, which is not very good. I think I had a plan at the start like everyone else, but my plan failed. However, I'm still really happy with my team. I think there's a few issues I need to sort out, but I still really am happy with my team. And I'm not going to say I'm happy with my score, but I did expect quite a low score because I knew I wasn't making any trades last week. I wanted to have another look at everything. I'm happy that I've still got those two trades I didn't use, and now I can start trading up. And an example for me, is I had Sean Russell still on the bench, and I was going to trade him out last week, and I was as a rage trade, obviously, to try to get someone in to get some more points. And I was looking at someone like, anyone I could afford was Gildard or someone like Cobbo, and they went terribly. But now luck has come my way, and I got potentially Tyler May available now moving forward. So it was probably a very smart choice for me to hold off. So next up, we'll talk about the SuperCoach 360 website. So you guys, go to the supercoach360.com. Check out some fantastic articles out there. We've got some great content out there brought out by Ross, Tim, and Glenn, and a few others out there putting some really good stuff out there. That's supercoach360.com. Jump on if you haven't already. Next up, we have some news. There was a fair bit of news out there this week. So we sent our man, Artie Pie in the Sky, out there to go get some good news for us. What do you got, Glenn?
Not a lot of good news, but I'll give you the bad news. So Grant's out with COVID, as we all know. So that might hurt a few coaches. Hodjo out for the season. Dunn out for the season. Lachlan Fitzgibbon to have scans. I'm not sure on the progress of that. Toho 6 to 8 weeks. James Fisher-Harris got a nasty gash above the eye, so he's out for 3 to 4 weeks. They've also got Leota out to come back in the middle of the season at some point. Ponga round 3, Clemmer round 5, is that? And Daniel Safidi round 3. So they could be back this round, Clemmer and Safidi, I believe. Maddo out, Taith out, and Amac from the Dragons is out. And Tuolagi had a head knock with the Tigers game, so he's been asked to rest because it was a 5-day turnaround. So he won't be back until the next. Some other news we have is Isako signing with the Eels, but apparently it's the Titans. That's correct. So we got our original post to come up with the Eels, and then we got some troll throwing up a Tigers one, and it turns out it was actually to the Titans. So a good buy, I think. Ozako. I know a lot of other people don't agree, but I like Ozako. Burgess in trouble with the police. On the 8th of March, he was charged with, on the 8th of March, he apparently done something a little sketchy and he's got to go to court on April 13th. So he's been stood down on the no stand down policy. I think the Dragons Club stand him down, from my understanding. But we'll hear more on that. And that's pretty much all the news that I have at the moment, guys.
Yeah, fair bit out there. Nothing really good though, like you said. All right. So one thing we're going to talk about this week, guys, we're going to talk about the way the reffing has impacted the game. So one thing I'll start the ball rolling. One thing I've noticed is that the ball, I checked out some stats earlier, the time in play has not changed very much from last year. It's very similar to last year. And I'll find, I'm just going to go off a guess and say that last year they were standing behind the goalpost and they were waiting for conversions. But this year it's because they're blowing the whistle a bit more. As far as I'm concerned, I feel as though it's more the referee's show at the moment. They're not having that free-flowing game that we all came to love last year. What do you think there, Ross?
Well, I think there's lots of change with it. Obviously the 6 again rules obviously change things inside your half now. You don't get the 6 again, you get the penalty. So obviously that's affected SuperCoach points big time. And also, too, a lot of the quick taps have been canned out, too. You can't really take the quick tap anymore off a penalty or anything like that. So, now you've got to wait till the ref gets back, let the defensive side get set, which then takes away chances of line breaks and everything else. So look, as I said off air before, I mean, this year's going to be very different. We're looking at 2014, 2015 scores this year. And I really don't see many double tons coming up this year or even close to it, just the way things are going.
Yeah, I'm starting to agree there as well. Brod, any thoughts, mate?
No, look, as a fan, obviously we needed the excitement last year with all the COVID. And this year, it has been a bit off-putting because of the stop-starts. My team starts winning and I feel like football's died a little bit to what we got the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the rules are a bit of a blessing in disguise for the Broncos, I reckon. The bigger body forwards there, I think so. I think they're handling a bit better. Timmy, Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, look, guys, without going into too much with a shameless plug, I actually wrote an article this week and it's on the supercoach360.com website. It's what's to go with Timmy O, and basically that's exactly what I talked about, the new 6 again rule and all the modifications to the 6 again rule and what effect it's had. The big difference being that what happened last year was when blokes are coming out, teams are coming out from their line, there'd be a ruck infringement to try and slow it down. So the ref would do the 6 again real quick, and then it'd just keep going. And then they might get to the second tackle and they do the same thing again. So he'd blow it again and it'd be 6 again and 6 again. And all of a sudden teams were having basically like 10 or 11, 12 straight tackles. The difference now is the ref's letting a little bit more of it go. And then when it gets beyond that point of got to do something about it, that's when they're putting the whistle in the mouth and blowing. So that seems to be what the big difference is now, that their teams are only getting a set of 6. They're not getting 10, 11, 12 tackles. And that's when Turbo and Paps and those guys were cutting through. And that's been the big difference. When they're getting the continuous tackles coming out of their own red zone, they were cutting straight through. And that's not happening now, because the refs are going back to adjudicating the game instead of just finding the simple approach, which was this, and letting teams deal with it. So I think that's had a major difference, because the forwards aren't having to move as much. They're getting a lot more rest because the ball's getting kicked out of play eventually. Like we all see it, the ref blows a whistle, the halfback looks at the 5'8", passes him the ball, and then the 5'8" will throw it to the hooker, and then it gets thrown back to the halfback. He goes, yeah, right, I'll kick it. So it takes about 30 seconds for him to kick for touch and a penalty. And that's enough time for the forwards to go back, set the line, have a bit of a breather. They're resetting, and then play continues. So the forwards aren't being affected as badly as what they were last year. They're just getting that little bit more rest time than what they were.
Yeah, I found that last year, I played when I was younger. I played a lot of rep touch football, and it was very similar to that. Where when you obviously you make the tag, and then they got to get back on line, and then you see all those line breaks constantly, and that's what I saw a lot with especially Turbo and Teddy and that. And yeah, that's just not happening this year. Glenn, what are your thoughts, mate? I know you got a lot of thoughts on this one.
Yeah, a few. Look, firstly, we're doing shameless plugs. I actually also wrote an article this week for 360, but I also addressed the referee. I wrote it called All About the Base. And one of the things that I will say is that it shows you just how much influence the referees have on a game. When we go into a season where 60, 70 points in a game are being scored, and then we've only had one game where we've scored over only 40 points, what I've noticed is they're pretty quick to blow the whistle in our 20 and give you that penalty where you kick and go out. But what they're not getting is those repeat sets, which we saw last year when you're in their red zone, where they would give a second, a third, and a fourth, and teams were having to defend 4 or 5 sets in a row. So that was obviously tiring defenses. It was condensing defenses, which meant that the edges became a lot more vulnerable because the edge, you'd have to get in tighter to defend those quick rucks. But yeah, what it says to me clearly is that the referees have too much influence on our game.
Yeah, I did notice that. I was watching even round 1 and round 2, and as I was watching the games, all I could say was, "Is this the referee show or what?" Because it just seems it's all about them. They want to get their camera time, and I know it's obviously not right, but that's what it seemed like, and it was really frustrating. But I guess we were spoiled last year with a bit more faster play, and I guess we grew accustomed to it, and now we want to see more fast play. And I guess you go.
I just add on that too, that I think that this directions come from above. I mean, last year, like you said, and I agree, we had COVID last year, and what we got to see last year was exciting, and it took all our mind off what was going on. But I think that a lot of true football fans have said, hey, look, we don't want to see scores of 40-20. We want to see these close contests. And that's what we're getting this year. So for taking my SuperCoach hat off as a rugby league fan, I like these close contests. But I mean, again, I reiterate, it shows you that the referee has too much influence when you can have games where 60 points are scored or where below 40 points are scored, and it's all by how it's adjudicated. So it says that our players have got less influence on our game sometimes than the actual referee do.
Yeah, it is. It is. I do agree. It's a lot of the last year. It was the top 6, and then there was daylight in the bottom 8 or bottom 10. So it's really good to actually have a bit more closer contests out there. I think especially a team like Newcastle is appreciating it a fair bit as well. They're having the big body forwards, getting that 30-second rest and actually defending a lot more. Timmy?
Yeah, can I just say too, I think something else, that the fact that they're already blowing the penalties and things for the incorrect play the ball. So they've obviously decided we need to slow the game down. And what's looking at the individual little things that are speeding a game up, and they're going, well, play the ball. Rule is they've got to touch it with their foot or at least make an effort. And some of these blokes are doing it like touch footy and just take the tag and roll it underneath their legs and run. And obviously that's something that they've focused on to go, let's come back, let's stick to the rules. And that's another way we can slow the game down. If they're not going to do it, we'll start blowing penalties. And then sooner or later, coaches are going to go rip into their players and go, look, you've got to touch the ball with your foot.
Yeah, that's it. One thing that I'll put to you guys, though, is how often does this happen where they have a massive rule change and the referees for 4 to 5 weeks will blow the hell out of that whistle, and then all of a sudden they'll just calm down on it again? Do you reckon this will stop? Do you reckon they'll start calming down soon?
Look at Magic Round last year and how that changed it. It was like the game was just completely stood on its head. They decided in our showpiece event for the year, where everyone's playing in the same place at the same time, let's just keep sending blokes off every time someone gets hit in the head. So it was like, if you brush past a bloke, mate, go and sit down for 10. And then at the end of the season, we had stiff arms flying in and things like that, and blokes were just getting put on report. So and I've got no doubt the same thing will happen. They tried this about 5 years ago with the play the ball, and obviously coaches just started ripping in. By about mid-season, no one's foot was anywhere near the ball. It comes and goes.
Yeah, and I found that I think Brod brought it up a couple of last week, that I get that they have directive from above to blow those whistles for the no play the ball, but is every referee getting that memo? Because I saw a few games where they didn't even touch the whistle when it comes to play the balls, and then all of a sudden next game there's a referee blowing it like 4 times for that one thing. So I don't know if all the referees. I think one thing. This is actually one thing I thought about. Is I'm going to actually look at who's adjudicating each game and look at who's the referee, who's the guy. Is he the one blowing the whistle for the play the balls? Is it? And actually, I reckon that will actually play a massive part on who I'll play on matchups. Not just matchups, but also who's refereeing that game. So that's something to look at as well. Glenn?
That's what I actually was going to address. I was going to say that it actually does pay to do. And I've done that before in previous seasons to look at how certain referees adjudicate, because some of them have a different interpretation of how things are played out. I mean, you watched the game with Storm and South, and I know this is a narrative that people don't like hearing, but Storm were holding on in that 20 so long, and it was so frustrating. And I just kept thinking, are they going to penalise them or not? And they're giving away. The other part of the thing that really frustrated me was some of these HIA rules where they were called, I mean, what was it, Bird, the one that got hit in the nose by, was it Dylan Edwards that hit Bird in the nose and he got taken off? I mean, I get it. I mean, these players are laying down, and halfway you think, well, you deserve it. You know, if you want to be a dipstick and lay down and then they take you off. But I mean, there has to be some common sense applied too, you know?
Yeah, and like one thing I know as well, and this is coming obviously from a Panthers fan, Sewer, that was that a send-off, guys? Was that 10 in the bin? I don't bloody think so.
1.4 seconds.
Yeah, what the hell was that?
1.4.
And that was mainly, you know, and I'll say this right now as a Panthers fan, that was mainly because Soz had a nice little lay down.
Yeah,
that's what I saw.
He was milking that big time.
Oh, of course. And I had a massive hissy fit about Fergo last year for doing it against the Panthers. And then I was like, you know, I can't be hypocritical. I have to have a go at Soz for that as well. That was bullcrap. So, yeah.
There's plenty later tackles in the round than that.
Oh, heaps. Timmy?
What I did like there was a couple of instances later in the round where I think there was two particular plays where that's exactly what happened. They laid down and you saw him and as soon as the referee blew the whistle, and it was just comical to watch it, because as soon as the referee blew the whistle, he just literally went, "Yep, cool." Hey, like you're kidding. And then they went upstairs and they had talk to the guys up in the box and came down. No, nothing wrong with that tackle, play on. And you just went, that's what needs to happen more often. Tell these blokes to stop laying down. Wasn't enough in it. Game on.
And what about the Broncos try? So what if Burns had have gone down? Would that have been a try? Do you know the one where they had the infringement where he came in, he caught it on the inside shoulder, and the Broncos end up scoring a try?
On the rules, Glenn, it's a no try.
That's right.
This was outside. But for once they used common sense, that he was never going to make it there. That was the Broncos in the round one against South. Same play happened. We scored against South, but they said that it hit that outside shoulder, and it was a no try. Even though I think it was Arrow or someone, they were never going to get there to the winger.
Yeah, I agree. The right result. My question.
But the rule is outside shoulder, so it should have been a try.
Yeah, my question was, would it have been a no try had Burns jumped and gone down?
Doesn't need to. He got hit in the outside shoulder. It shouldn't have been a try.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say it's a no try.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
That's the thing. They made that rule black and white for a reason, and there's still been some conjecture about like a couple of I can't remember anything specific, but I know that last week there was a couple where they ran through the line, and even though he tried to squeeze through the line, the guy would still tackle him, and he ran on the inside shoulder. But then there's a guy behind him trying to follow through. Yeah. Even though he's on the inside shoulder of one of the players, there's a guy next to him still, and he tried to go through and then runs into him, falls over, and gets it. So you can run in the inside of someone's shoulder, unless you're all the way on the right wing, there's got to be someone inside you. So it's the inside defender now that's milking it and trying to get and that's happened a couple of times. So this black and white rule might need to change back to a rule where common sense is actually going to prevail. So I bet. Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to happen though. All right, any other thoughts, guys?
I agree with Brod on one thing there. It's that I think they got the right result, common sense applied, and I'd like to see that applied more without our game. You know, in ones where they're just not going to get there, just apply some common sense.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, let's move on to the positional analysis. So we'll start with hooker. Glenn, we've given you some guns to look at in hooker, mate. Who are you thinking is the best of the crop, mate?
Well, obviously Grant. I mean, we all saw what Grant did. He carved up the middle there. I wrote a few stats. I actually wrote out quite a lot of stats, but I'm not going to go into them for Grant. He had some phenomenal plus, outside of his base, but his base was 54. It was actually 59, but he had 5 errors, 2 missed goals and 5 missed tackles, I think. So he lost a fair bit of points there. So obviously Grant would be one of them. But the interesting ones that I looked at were Damien Cook. I like the draw that he's got coming up. and his base was actually quite impressive too with, 52 and 48. With the draw that he's got coming ahead, I don't mind. We obviously talked about Jeremy Marshall-King, who I thought looked, pretty decent. I think he's got a SuperCoach friendly game. And the one that's kind of yuck to come out of my mouth, but I have to say it, is Apai Coruscant. He played He played 67 and 80 minutes. He got 91 points and 71 points, and he had 38 and 47 in base. I mean, obviously there was a few things that went wrong in that second game that enabled him to play those 80 minutes. But what I like about the Apai Coruscant one is that he's in a ceiling club. And but I think that he'll slowly lose minutes, and Kenny will get more as the time goes on, because they're trying to get Kenny into that side because Apai's leaving. But they're the four hookers, sorry, mate, that stood out for me.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's pretty much Grant and Daylight there. My plan was to bring, because I've still got Nicarima there. I was going to bring Nicarima straight to Grant, and I was blessed this week that Nicarima got named and Grant was out with COVID, so I was kind of blessed in that way. Well, let's look at the other options there. Looking at the cheapies. So Timmy, we'll look at that. Sorry, we're going to call them cheap. We'll call them cash cows. So not all these guys will be cheap, but they're having to break even. And this is the most important round, I believe, for making that cash. So Timmy, who you got there, mate? Who do you think is going to make you some money in the hook position?
In hooker, mate, the only real one I think that's standing out at the moment is Jeremy Marshall-King. I'm not a fan myself, but that's just me personally. He's currently got a BE of -9. He's sitting at 427,700. Look, he can certainly, he's going to make you cash, absolutely. Whether or not he's going to play 80 minutes, whether he's going to play big minutes long term and keep going up in value, he's going to make you cash short term. Whether or not he's going to turn you into Grant, who knows? It's I started with Reed Marnie myself, and I'm sort of at a bit of a crossroads. I've got Marnie and I've got Randall. My plan since I've got to get rid of Turbo because he's about to bleed cash, I had to come up with a plan for where to go and what to do next. So now that Grant's not playing this week, I was planning on not bringing him in this week anyway, and waiting till next week before his price changes for hooker. But yeah, look, I've got Randall and Reed Marnie, and I'm just going to hold tight for the moment. I think with hookers, I just don't think there's enough out there. Someone that may, if he gets the minutes, I'm still a little bit of a fan of Billy Walters. I think he'll get attacking stats when he's on the field, but again, it's a big question mark over how many minutes he's going to get. If he comes on, does a bit at hooker, his defense is fantastic. But yeah, it all comes down to minutes.
Yeah, my plan was to with Harry Grant before the season started was to wait for the 3 games and bring him in. Then hopefully Nico's made a bit of cash. But then after I saw him play, I was like, I need this guy in now. I think you need to have him in. And then, like I said, I was blessed having Nicarima named again because I wanted to bring him in this week, and that was my only trade that I was going to definitely make. That was the one I was like sold on. And now that it's kind of, I think it saved me a trade, and I can wait another week, which is good. But one other one I will mention there as well. I know he's not so much a cash cow, but I reckon he will be moving forward. Is actually Starling. I think Starling. I know he had a pretty bit of a shocker on the weekend, but with 39 points. But I think Starling has that Damien Cook-esque play where I think he has that ceiling. I think he scored 137 in a couple of years back when he had that when Hodjo was out and he came through, and just his beach sprinting come into play very similar to Cook. So that's one guy to watch out for. But with that low score in his rolling average, he's definitely one of those ones you can still wait and watch for as well. But like I said, I got Randall and Nicarima. I don't see me going Nicarima to Starling. I think it has to be Nicarima to Grant. No questions asked. So, all right, let's look at the ones that we're going to look at potentially selling here. So the guys that with the high break evens. Ross, how'd you go there, mate?
So I've got some here down, but I don't have anything down for hooker. I've only got them for some of the other positions because I had a bit of a look at the hooker. There's not really many that are going to lose a lot of cash. So in regards to hookers, I don't have anything down for that position. So
Yeah, no, there's not too much there really. There's very
Yeah.
minimal options there. Well, is there any pod options, Bride, that we could look at in the hooker position? I don't think there would be anyone decent. But I'm guessing I sent you out to do some research. Did you find anything?
Well, Harry Grant's the 12th highest hooker, playing one game. Literally 70 points off Appy. So if he doesn't kill it and own it, you know what? Give him every second week off. He'll still end up the highest scorer.
Yeah. And the whole point of a pod is to get a very low ownership player that's going to outscore the best. And I don't see that happening in hooker position.
Look, 7 of the top 10 scoring hookers are all under 10%. But I wouldn't touch those 7. Obviously, Jeremy Marshall-King's had a good start. Blake Brayley, who we know that is going to be affected now by McInnes, and Wade Egan. I don't even know how he's up there, but he is. But if you're going to look at players, you know it's going to be Cook. It's going to be Grant. I wouldn't look at a pod in the hooker position.
Yeah. Glenn, thoughts?
Oh, well, the one I was going to mention was Brayley, but I think now with the bench with Trindle on there and McInnes, I think that becomes scary. But he's been playing 80 minutes. He's in a side that's starting to get points, and his base is actually quite good. So Brayley was the only one I was really going to throw out there. And Starling, I think now that Hodjo's gone down, but they named a hooker on the bench even for Starling, so he didn't get the minutes anyway. So, yeah, I agree with Brode. I think that for me, Cook and Grant are the two that I see as the only two that I consider.
Yeah.
Can I just say, just really quick, Dan? I had a lot of kids at school actually ask me about Will Smith, and they said, "Oh, sir, what about Will Smith? He's nice and cheap. He's dual, and he's got a negative break even of negative 42. Surely he's going to go up heaps." And it's all well and good, but if he only gets 10 minutes, then he's not going to do anything. So he might get you 5 or 10 grand the second he steps on the field, but you're not going to be able to play him. He's going to be an AE nightmare, and he's certainly not someone that you're going to want on your team. If he keeps knocking out low scores, I mean, if he gets minutes, sure, he can break out a score. But if he's not getting minutes, he's going to have low scores. He's going to be a BE, and sooner or later, he's going to lose any cash that he's made.
Yeah. So what I'll
trades.
Yeah. So what I'll say on this is anyone that's is new and listening to this that doesn't know much about SuperCoach, the reason why we didn't mention him, and I'll tell you why. I can predict the future right now, and I'll say that Will Smith will get 20 points next week. He'll get you 30 grand in pay rise, and the week after his break even will be the same as what he's going to earn, and he'll be flat. Yep. So if you want to waste a trade and get 30 grand in for 1 week and then have an AE nightmare, go for it. But I strongly disagree, and I think you should never look at Will Smith ever again. The only way I look at him, and that's even changed now with the signing of Osako, is the only way I look at him is if AJ goes down. And even then, I still reckon Osako has played time at 5'8", and Osako will be there for a depth signing. And they'd probably even put I just don't see Will Smith being relevant for the rest of the year unless there's about 12 injuries in that team. So
I agree.
All right, guys, let's move on to the front row. Timmy O, any good cash cows in the front row, mate? There's plenty there, I know of.
Yeah, absolutely. Max King, negative 45, 188,700. He's just about the pick of the bunch as far as I'm concerned. Josh King, negative 9, break even at 255, 800. Yeah, look, there is some there, but they would be the two main ones that I'll be looking at.
I'll say one thing. With Clemmer out, and it looks like Clemmer's going to be out for approximately 3 to 5 weeks, is what they're saying. The NRL physio is saying. Leo Thompson, a negative break even of a negative 3 break even. He's still on the bench, but I see he's the one getting the benefits and from the bench rather than Momasia. So I think if you wanted to say, if you had a cheapie like, I'm not sure, I won't say Tanoa Brown because he'll be back next week probably, but someone like another cheapie like Andrew Fafita, he's scoring 26s and he's break even is 22. He's going to be a very, very, very slow burn. You might want to think about going a downgrade and get Leo Thompson at bottom dollar 175. He's probably going to be a slow burn, but a much faster than what Andrew Fafita is going to be. Unless you have Max King and Josh King on your bench, I suggest you get him in. All right, now to go to the cells. Ross, anyone there, mate, that you think has a bit of a high break even that we should get rid of?
Well, the only one I can think of is Big Stefano, because last week, obviously, they were pretty ordinary against Newcastle. He ended up going off twice. He only played 38 minutes. His break even's about 76, and he's projected to lose about 21k. So for me, he probably is a sell. He's probably not a priority sell, but if you've got the cash and you want to upgrade him to someone else, then like a TPJ or someone like that, then I'd probably suggest it. But he was unlucky. He should have scored a try. He dropped the ball over the line, so he could have easily scored 60 points. But the minutes are a bit of a concern for me. Even the first weekend, he played 50 minutes, so he's probably the standout for me in the front row forward, who's probably a sell.
Yeah, I think for front rowers, we're not relying on tries either. And if he gets that try and gets 60 points, then great. But he didn't get the try, and he's very low. So we rely on a lot of base for front rowers. So yeah, I think he's a sell as well. But like I do agree that I think it's a bit of a luxury trade. So if you've got no other issues, then yeah, I look to even downgrade him or upgrade him. Either way, you need to get him out of your team if you can. Brian, I know pod isn't the thing I think of when I think of front rowers, but any pods in the front row that you're looking at, mate?
So let's see, Tokyo, obviously up there. I don't know if his minutes were inflated last week. I'm sure Glennie can let me know on that one, but only owned by 1%. And then there's Tom Gilbert, who I think was one of Timmy O's little picks at the start of the year, who's at 3.77%. But again, none of them are going to get near Huss, but I think they'll get near Isaiah Papali as well. So I think those two will be standout. But there's a couple of little ones that can probably make you some cash to get up there.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I think that Gilbert there, especially with Lukey unfortunately going down with an ACL, I think that really was it not Lukey Dunn, sorry, went down with an ACL. That really actually helps Gilbert's minutes as well. So he's an option for it's very rare to see a pod cash cow at the same time as well, because everyone's trying to get cash. All righty. Should we move on to the guns? Who are the guns? Sorry?
Just quick, Dan. Takaaho's minutes against the Knights, he had 54 minutes, and last week against Manly went 62 minutes. It was 41 points in base week one, 65 the next. 43 points in total points in round one, and 69 last week. So yeah, 0.8 ppm the first week and 1.11 the second week.
Yeah, so I think as well, I don't think there needs to be an inflated minutes when it comes to the Roosters, because you know what Robert does with those front row, he rotates really weirdly. Yeah. So it's just such a sporadical bench rotation there. As you can see with Teamley, it's putting Angus on the bench. All right, Glenn, obviously there's a few guns out there in the front row, mate. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we don't need to talk about Haas. I mean, he's based 75 in game one and 55 in game two, points 91, 67, played 71 minutes and 60. I mean, everyone knows about Haas, so I'll move past him. But the three that I like, I mean, one of the ones was Gilbert. I thought in the game one, he got 61 in Bates, and that excited me. But then all of a sudden he drops out and has a low score in the next game. But anyone that's playing second row that plays front row, 80 minutes in second row that can be bought at front row for Supercoach is definitely worth looking at. But the other three that I looked at were obviously Arrow, based on points per dollar. His scores haven't been, fantastic with, I think he got a 62 and a 55, but his base is 52 and 49. And what I like about Arrow is he's starting on an edge and then moving into the middle, which when you're defending in the middle, running in the middle, you obviously have a higher base. And for someone with Stefano, going down to Arrow wouldn't be a terrible trade, because you've got a duel and you're getting a little bit of coin in return. The other two, obviously, is Aidan Fanua-Blake and Isaiah Papali. I'll start with Isaiah Papali. We all know what he can do, but at the moment his numbers are down with a 58 and 65, base of 48 and 55, but he's playing 80 minutes on an edge in Parramatta. And so when his price comes down, I would recommend highly jumping on IPAP and running Haas and IPAP as your two front rowers. The other one I obviously like, but He apparently is injured, or I'd watch a little bit longer, is Aiden Fanua-Blake. He is as capable as the other two, maybe not as high ceiling as the other two. But yeah, I would just look at Haas and IPAP and Daylight, really.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it was a hand injury that AFB had. I'm pretty sure he had a bit of a hand injury. He kept playing on, and they're saying he's good to go. But just keep an eye on him. All right, let's move on to the second row forwards, guys. So Timmy O, any cheapies the second row forward, mate? I'm pretty sure there's a few out there.
Yeah, there is a few. Look, I still currently have Isaac Targo up in second row.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty handy duel to have to flick him between centre wing and second row. So he's a minus 33 BE at 287,900. And yeah, like I said, dual second row centre wing. Also got Nat Butcher. Now, this is an interesting one. I've seen a lot of talk about people bringing Nat Butcher in. Plays for the Roosters. He's got a negative 18 break even, 420,800. Only second row, doesn't have any dual capability. I don't know, like there's been a lot of talk about how good the bloke is. Is he going to get the minutes though? We don't know what's going to happen with Angus. Angus has gone to the bench. I'm not convinced that that's necessarily going to happen. I know Robbo's not the type of coach that holds back with those sorts of things. If he's telling you you're starting on the bench, then 99% of the time you're starting on the bench. The only issue something might be is if some of the guys that have got a niggle or whatever don't pull through, then Angus is going to go straight back in. I'm not convinced that Nat Butcher is going to start every week, but he's played all right so far. What are our thoughts?
With Butcher, if you're like, I think he's a good draft option because even coming from the bench, he usually gets around the 45, 50 mark anyway. Because he's that workhorse that does a lot of work in the middle there. I'm avoiding like the plague when it comes to the Classic personally, just because when you got Angus Crichton, one of the best second rows in the game, on the bench, I don't see minutes inflating. I think he's going to do the same thing starting as he does from the bench.
Yeah.
So, and I know last week he started, he came from the bench and scored 2 tries, but when's that going to happen ever again? It might happen once every blue moon. So, Ross, your thoughts, mate?
He played 54 minutes in round 1, 61 minutes last week, scored 41 points in his 54 minutes in week 1 for a 0.76 ppm. Obviously got his 114 points last week. That was in 61 minutes for a 1.87 ppm. But yeah, his base was 41 in week 1 and 44 in week 2. So even though he scored 114 points, so he scored an extra, 73 points in week 2. His base, he got 3 more points in base. So he got more minutes, 10 more minutes, and only scored 3 more points in base. So if he's not scoring tries, he's back under 50.
Yeah, that's right. What are your thoughts on Butcher, Ross?
Well, I mean, with him starting, we don't. I guess the other thing is going to be what minutes he plays. I think he's going to play less minutes starting, to be honest with you, unless when obviously Angus comes on after say 20 minutes or 30 minutes, that they move Butcher to the front row and he plays in the middle. But for me, the minutes are unknown, and I couldn't go there. Like, I just think purely, like Timmy said, he's not going to start every week. For me, he's just a trap. That's the way I see it. Like you said, not a bad option for draft, but for Classic, no, wouldn't be going anywhere near him.
Glenn?
Yeah, I wouldn't be touching him either. But I mean, he's an interesting watch because I actually think that there's a chance that Tilly could be out this week and Angus comes into the left edge. But I mean, possibly wrong. But if he's not, I think that Angus will come on in the middle and then he'll push Butcher off and he'll move to an edge and Butcher will go back to the bench. I think his minutes will be exactly what they always are. They'll just be different.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Any other cheapies or any cash cows in the second row there you got, Timmy? Or
Look, we've obviously got to talk about Billy Kickout. Every man and his dog seems to be bringing him in this week. I'm not. I'm dead against it myself. If you've watched SuperCoach for a long time, Billy Kicks, if he wants to get involved, he'll punch out 100 and then punch you out a 30 or 40 next week. I just don't see it myself. He scored 3 tries in the first 2 rounds. That's obviously not going to happen every week. Last week was a big emotional thing for him. He played his 100th game. His family was there. The Panthers flew the family over from Fiji. So it was a massive big deal. He's got a -5 break even, 519,600. He's only second row, so there's no dual capability there. I understand why some people are doing it because they're chasing last week points. But those that are, just beware. There's every chance next week he pumps out a 40. His minutes are always up and down. You often sit there, you see Panthers can be in a close game and they still don't bring him on. And the guy's an attacking weapon who can just run over people. But that depends on which player turns up. Is it the bloke that wants to be lazy and just stand out there and not do any hard work? Or is it the bloke that wants to go in and looking for it all the time and keep trying to push against that line? So, yeah, for me, it's not for me. But I can sort of see why some people are doing it, but just buyer beware.
Yeah, Ross?
I just think that he's one of those players that you get in and you're going to play him on matchups, right? You're not going to play him every single week. Now, for me, his price, he's too expensive to have sitting on the bench and playing him only on matchups. That's the way I see it. You either bring him in and play him every week. You don't play him on matchups. Like, you can't at that price.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Is that he's that perfect player to have on matchups, just like Tim Moody did last year. And I think it's just too early in the season to be worrying about playing up on matchups at the moment. So you haven't got the solid gun depth at the start of the season that you'd love to have. Obviously, you got to build up to that and earn that right. So I think I'd say maybe over the buy period might be a perfect time when you built your salary cap up a little bit higher. You can chuck him in there and try and get those extra ceiling points. But yeah, I think Ross hit the perfect note there. I think you need to earn the right to get that luxury play.
The difference being last year he started at 450, so a lot of guys had him, and like Timmy Moody, he had him, and like we said, played on matchups. At 450 you can do that, but he's at 520 this year. And when you compare some of the other players at 520 that you could have, it's I think everything that we've said is certainly true.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get me over to Ross now. Who are the guys we should be selling, mate? The ones with the high break evens.
Well, obviously, this is a bit controversial because David Fafita, obviously, 128 break even, but I mean, I think this is a luxury trade again too, in a way, because just for the fact of the draw that they've got coming up. I think they play Canberra next week, which he averages about 80 points against. Then he's got the Tigers a week after. So the way the Tigers are going, he could go big. And to be honest with you, he could quite easily get that score. He's that capability. He's got that ceiling that if he gets enough ball, he could get 131. Yeah, obviously that's my dilemma at the moment, is to sell him or Angus. Angus is obviously the other one that a lot of people are selling because obviously he's starting off the bench. We don't know what minutes he's going to get. So, but yeah, other than Fafita, there's not really much else that stands out. There was only Josh Jackson that had a high break even, but I'm pretty sure not many people own Josh Jackson in SuperCoach. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the back row.
The thing for me, Ross, is the fullback for the Titans. He is suffocating Fafita like there is no tomorrow. Every time that sweep goes out to the right, he gets that ball and he looks at Fafita. He sees that Fafita wants to run, and then he just takes it.
Yeah,
like it's just killing. And you've got the biggest, most dangerous $1 million man sitting on that edge, and you've got a 70-kilo fullback who thinks he can do better. Just blows my mind.
You know, that's what worries me about holding him. Like you said, Brod, I mean, AJ fed him a lot of ball last year. He fed it like no tomorrow. Like, and the other thing is with Fafita, he just stays out on that edge, and he never comes looking for the ball. He doesn't take runs from dummy half. He's not in. He just doesn't seem interested.
Mm-hmm. Glenn?
The big difference this year though is he's gone from the left side to the right side. Now look, Bo Firma's been on the left-hand side, and look at the points of Bo Firma's like ripping up. I think if you put Fafita out there, he'd be doing an even bigger job than what Bo Firma is. So the fact that he's gone out the right, it's certainly the attack's just not going that way. And when it is, it's certainly stifled. But like we're saying, the fullback seems to sweep across and almost bumps into Fafita himself and goes, oh, geez, now you're here. It's no point me giving you the ball and sort of swings back inside and does something different. So he's not getting the early ball now that he's out the right because they just keep trying to push left. That's where they're getting the points from.
Yeah. Glenn?
Well, when we get to it, I'll just do Fafita now, but I've actually done a fair bit of writing on some of the second rowers. And when you compare Fafita's numbers compared to some of the others that are doing well at the moment, Fafita's is just ugly. And I concur with what Rod said, and I was going to actually mention it, was that Jaden Campbell absolutely cruels it for him. And I agree, moving him to the right edge hasn't been conducive to how he plays. But I still think that if you watched him last season, he moved to the right edge at the end of last season when he was playing 60, and he was scoring just as well. It's more about the Campbell one-man show. But if you actually look at what annoys me with Feeder, unlike an Angus, for example, is he doesn't come in and look for the work. And if you look at his stats, so Angus, so David Fafita, priced at 745K with a break-even of 138. He's played 80 minutes and 65 minutes with a base of 34 and 30, points of 60 and 54. That's not what you want from your $1 million man. You know what I mean? And when we get to the other stats of the other players, they actually bared really low in comparison. But as Ross points out, he can, in one play, get you 30, 40 points in a play. And so, I mean, all of us are in the same dilemma this week. We've got Angus and him with high break evens. Angus playing 50. I'm not convinced that he plays 80 minutes either. I mean, the coach seems to be bringing him off. So there's a big chance that could happen again. He could come off and still play those 65 minutes. And at that price point, I don't know if that's what I want.
The game was in the balance 2 weeks ago, and he still didn't bring him on.
Exactly.
And you could hear the NRL commentators, and they're going, if you're paying this bloke $1 million a year plus, when the game's on the line, you want that bloke on the field because he can just create something from nothing. And they still just let him sit on the bench for the last 15 minutes. It was ridiculous.
That was this round. Yeah, he played
65 minutes.
Well, we saw what he created when he got that pass, and he got the ball about 20 out from his own line, and he just absolutely tackle bust, line break. Like we know what he's capable of, but they just the coach has got to say something to Campbell. Like he's just got to get into him and say, just give him the ball. Just give him the ball. Like just let him run.
Yeah.
And Justin Holbrook's a decent coach. Like you'd like to think. I know he's a young coach and developing coach and all the rest of it, but you'd like to think he's got the smarts to go, hey, look, we're paying this bloke $1 million for a reason. Let's try and get him the ball.
Yeah,
I agree. Well, I'll continue this with a lot of the questions we're being asked recently was, what are we all doing with Fafita and Angus? I'll start with Timmy. What are your plans, mate? If you do have it, do you have both or?
Look, at this point in time, because there's still so much unsurety about Angus and what's going to happen, I think even with the Titans, I'm interested to see what's going to happen closer to game day. But because I started with Turbo as well, so I've got basically 4 big guns that are going to bleed a hell of a lot of cash if things don't quite go their way. So I'm definitely cutting my losses with Turbo. My plan was cut Turbo, cut Fafita. And even if it's a short-term play for 2 or 3 weeks, those 2 players alone can lose you $500,000 over the next 3 rounds. Like if they both go back to scoring 60s, they're going to lose $500,000 in 2 to 3 weeks. So that's just stupidly obscene amounts of money, and you can't hold them if that's what's going to happen. But it all comes down to whether they're going to get whether Angus and Fafita are going to get the minutes. So, like I said, I'm going to hold them for as long as I possibly can and wait till basically game day and make a decision from there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I still believe, like hand on heart, that Angus and Fafita are the 2 best second rowers to have in SuperCoach. And I know they're going to lose a lot of cash, but in my opinion, you can't lose cash if you don't trade them out. And I still reckon I'm happy to hold them all year. I just know they're going to turn it around. It's obviously a very hopeful thing at the moment. I believe with a lot of the press out there, a lot of the superstars or ex-superstars of the game, I think it was Willie Mason was saying how they're wasting Fafita on the bench there on the right side. Sorry, and that stuff gets to everyone. If I'm hearing about this stuff in the press, I'm sure Holbrook is as well. And I'm sure that eventually it's going to get to them. I just think that they'll start utilizing them better soon, and I'm really hoping that both these guys will be number 1 and number 2 second rows in the game, and I'm not going to lose any money because I'm not trading them out. Glenn?
The common denominator there was they're both left-handed side second rowers and have both been moved out of their position of, well, essentially their position of choice, and they've both been moved to the right-hand side. It's obviously like you look at coaching and you go, well, obviously their left sides are strong, so they're taking their best second rower and moving them to the right side to try and shore up their right side. And hopefully they can spread the points out a lot more. Instead of every set of 6 just going left, they're moving those guys to the right, hoping that they can sort of spread the opposition out a little bit more in defence. So who knows? But it's not rocket science to go, we score all our points there. That guy's fantastic on the left, and now it's hurting us when they're out the right. And they're both high paid players, so why not be putting them in their preferred position?
Mm-hmm. Clem?
Well, when I bought Angus, I expected that he was playing outside of Keary, and that Walker, when I bought Walker, I expected he was playing on the right with Stilly Tupanua outside of him. So I had it set way. So I'm actually selling Angus this round. I'm afraid to do that because the draw coming up for Angus is very nice, and I'm holding for feeder. But don't be surprised if that swaps and I sell for feeder and I sell and hold Angus. At the moment, it's literally one. I am selling one. I'm just not sure which one at the moment. One's set to lose 35, one's set to lose 30, and that's also based on what they score. But one starting from the bench on the right side where I didn't expect him to be playing. Keary's taking all the ball. There's another big factor in this, guys, that Walker is playing. Even when at first receiver, it's going to Keary, and Keary picked up Butcher out there. He picked up Stilly Tupanua out there. The ball's just not also going to Angus's way. So even if he does come on and play 50, is he going to get the ball? So, yeah, I think at this point, guys, it's Angus for me.
Yeah. Rob, what are your thoughts, mate?
Biggest headache I've got this week. I've got no real other huge problems in my team, even though I'm ranked so shit. But Fifi, Angus, they can both come out this week and score 150. They could, but just the way that the coaches are using them, I'm thinking about holding for one more week and hoping that they don't bleed too much, and then we see something. Or I'm probably trading both of them out. It's one of the two. It'll be both or none. So.
Can I just point out I made an error there, by the way? So Walker's playing on the left and Keary's playing on the right, and Angus is actually playing outside of Keary. But I was expecting it on the left because that's the way that Keary shifts. So even though he's playing on the right, if you watch the game, he's playing a left side dominant play where he's sweeping around Walker, picking the ball up and then picking up Tupanua and Butcher. So he is actually on the right where Angus is. It's just not going that way. Their set plays are all set left, and when they do go right, they pick up Tedesco. So
not picking up Teddy.
No, well, that's what their set plays are for. They go short usually to Angus or their second row, and they play long behind, to Tedesco, or they play wide to the wing. They have those 3 set plays on that right hand, and they're the 3 of them. And the short shuffle onto the right side second rower come much better when Walker was in that position for mine.
But we all know that teams change after about the 5th round once they have the feel, and I just don't trust any of them.
And can I also point out they also change team specific. So you might see one side one round dominate the left hand. Everything's going left, because they've identified a chink in the armour on the other side that's on the right. The very next game, they could go right, because they've identified a chink in the armour on the opposite side. But as a rule of thumb, most sides play left side dominant because most people are right-handed. They pass left. It's just the way of the nature of the game. But, good coaches do identify where the chinks in armour are. And, so maybe some can hold the faith. I almost had a scenario where I was selling Stags and keeping both. But then when I heard that news, I thought, I'm just selling one because it pretties up the rest of my side.
Ross, do you have both, mate?
I do have both, and I have no idea who I'm selling. One of them's going, but I don't know which one. It was going to be for Fafita, but now that Angus has been benched, it might be Angus. But then I look at the Roosters draw coming up, and it's just absolutely juicy draw coming up. But obviously, if they're going to keep going left, then obviously Angus is not going to score well. But then for Fafita, as I said, the next 2 games they've got Raiders and
Tigers.
and I'm worried that he's going to tear our side a new one. So I'm in a dilemma at the moment. I don't know what I'm going to do. So, yeah,
Well,
but one of them's definitely going.
Well, I hope that if anyone had any questions about what they're going to do about this, I'm hoping that cleared it up with our
Clear as mud.
I'm keeping both, and that's purely because I hate watching them if I haven't got them. And I'm going to say it right now before I move on to the halves. My bold prediction is Sam Walker, and also for Feeder to get their break evens this week.
Wait up, Dan. You haven't covered the guns in second row position.
Yeah, mate. I thought we already spoke about the two guns so far, mate.
Yeah, no, we talked about two spuds.
Huh.
I just identified 4 players. I think I would like to mention them because I think if you're out there looking for good second rowers to swap to, I think Olakawada from Manly. I won't go through all their stats. I'll just run who they are quickly. And Olakawada from Manly, I think you can look at. I think that Curran is a decent one to look at. I think Yo is another one you can look at. And the last one would be Tyson Frizzell. Although, and I think they're playing a good game this season, Knights, and based on all 4 of them, they've got really nice base. So, you know, I won't read it all out to you, but I really like Olakawatu the best out of all of them.
Yeah, I think I was leaning towards Olakawatu. I think him and Yo were 2 guys I was looking at if I was to trade out for Feeder and Angus. And that also would free up enough cash for me to go Sam Walker to Cleary when he's back as well. But I was leaning towards Frizzell or Yo, and then I decided Yo over Frizzell because I think Frizzell got that try the weekend, and it really boosted his score. He got a fair bit of base in week 1, but I don't think you can rely on it every single week. With Yo, you can. You get 60 every single week. So, and that's why I figure like the game's going that way where base is going to be key. So yeah.
And another plus for Olakawatu and also for Curran for that matter is that they both play in the first bye round. Although there is some mention of Curran being mentioned for Origin, Olakawatu is not in that bag. And so, I was surprised to hear today that Curran was going to be named possibly for New South Wales. But Olakawatu isn't and plays the first bye. So, you know, just something that people out there should keep in mind is the bye rounds when looking at buying players.
And I'll say one last thing on Olakawatu as well, is that he's got pretty decent sized scores in the first 2 games in losing teams.
And it's fun saying Olakawatu.
Oh, it is good, yeah. And Molly.
Say his first name.
Molly. Molly.
He's just Ollie.
Ollie.
All right, so we're going to speed things up a little bit. I'm going to go halfbacks and 5/8 in the one row, guys, because most of them are duels. Does Brad want to talk about some pods in the second row?
Yeah, well, 11 or the top 11 players are all owned by less than 10.1%.
Oh, wow.
So not to name them all, because you guys have obviously named a fair few of them. Wilton's at second at 1.5%, obviously out. Brazil's only owned by 3%. You got CHN, which we all discussed at the start of the season. We couldn't trust the Raiders, and there he is at 1.8%. So people listen to us, just not the scores that and the minutes that we thought he'd get. Obviously, the scores we knew, but just not the minutes. And then there's Sean Lane, who's only owned by 3%, who's obviously running off those lines. So second rows are all pods this year. It's where we should have gone.
Yep.
Yeah, I loaded up on the second row and didn't get any of them. So that's good.
Yeah, I knew Teague Welton was a talent as well, but I mean, if you had have asked me the second rower to go on that side, I would have said Britt Nakora. But I mean, Hines just isn't picking him up. Again, Teague Welton, I own Teague Welton in the draft, and he's been doing exceptionally well, Brod. He's a good option. When he's
suspended,
back, obviously.
Suspended this week.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, if you've got Nakora, sell Nakora.
All right, guys. Let's move on to the halfbacks and 5/8 positions. So we'll look at some cheapies. Timmy, what cheapies you got there, mate? What cash cows?
Adam Clune at -12 break even, 293,700 in halfback only. Again, going back to Billy Walters, 5/8 and hooker. I've got Amon in my team. Now he's not so much negative break even as such, but he's doing a job. He played really well last week. I think he's finished with 48 points after add-ons and whatever else. So, but the big one this week back for the Raiders is obviously Schneider, I think they're pronouncing. He's obviously only playing his second game. Ricky Stewart's brought him straight back in, which is fantastic. They put Frawley out. I think the Raiders look much better in week 1 than they did last week, and that hurts me to say because I can't stand the Raiders. My brother's a massive fan, and he's a unit. So it's I've got Schneider in my team. I think he's currently up in my halfback spot, but I've got both my backups as dual halfback 5'8", so I can move him around a little bit. But yeah, that's basically where things are at the moment. I think in the halves, outside of the guns and whatever else. But yeah, this is just the cheapies and the low break evens.
Yeah, we're looking at 5'8" as well, and I'll say now that Schneider, when he was in the team, Whiten looked a lot better as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Freed up, and Whiten's got a break even of 5. So I'm not saying go there, but I'm saying keep an eye on him. I think the way Schneider plays may really open him up a bit more. So just keep an eye on him. I'm not going to go there because I think he's shown glimpses of greatness in the past and then didn't turn up the week after. So I was trying to watch it for a bit more long term to see if I can get some consistency out of him. But yeah, I'm looking at that really closely.
And a lot of guys are playing him in their 17 this week from the sounds of things. From all the chalk, like obviously we're in different groups online that have a chat with some of the boys that do the other pods and things like that. But I think because of the way injuries have gone this week, a lot of people are going to play him in their 17. But yeah, I think he's pretty safe for a 45 to 50 and then any attacking stats on that.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm playing him personally in my 17. I've got 19 available players that are worth playing, and I've chosen him over 2 others that are doing all right. So, Ross, any sells, mate? I know I've got one. So, who are you looking at?
Jolie Cherry Evans. This is a bit. I mean, Manly haven't been off to a great start, but in saying that, he's 695, 400 with a break even of 106. Only projected to lose about 12k now. I think because you've got other options out there that are better. I mean, he scored 60 both games, which is not too bad in the side that got pretty comprehensively beaten both games. But I just think for that cash price, jump off him and jump on Nico Hines. That's what I think anyway. Nico's got the negative breaker. He's got a low breaker, even about 50, which he should get. Should make you some money. But yeah, that's all I've got for halves or 5'8". Maybe and Cody Walker too, of course. Cody Walker.
Yeah, don't forget the guy that I'm selling.
Cody Walker, 735,000, scores of 27 and 17. His base is very ordinary, only 15. His break even's 199 and projected to lose close to 90k. So obviously they're probably the 2 that need to probably go.
Yeah, I'm still. I know I wouldn't have helped too much, but I'm still disappointed that Cody Walker didn't get that try assist that was given to Milne. I think that was all Cody Walker that pass, and Milne did nothing to get that and pass the ball and got a try assist. So, but in saying that, that's probably one of my SuperCoach mind playing games with me. Glenn, mate, all the guns there, mate, we should be aiming for.
Well, you mentioned one already, which was Hines. He scored 72 and 101 in his 2 games he played of 80 minutes. But what it stands out to me about Hines that, is just quite phenomenal, really, is his base of 36 and 37. And that's raw base. That's without adding his goals, his offloads and his tackle busts. And oddly enough, he only averages 1 tackle bust a game. But his offloads, he has a couple a game. So, there's a few points there. The other ones that I think are interesting is obviously Moses has been playing very well. And I think if you own Moses, I would hold. I think if you own Walker, now Walker's an interesting one. Walker's in a side that's about to have a really good draw. And I think that if you own him, you could run and he'll do you well. But what I like for myself personally is the half that touches the ball most. And in that side, fortunately, it was Keary. And Keary's someone I just won't touch based on his injury history. So they're the 3 halves that really stood out to me was Hines, Walker and Moses. And the other one I thought, I don't have to say I disagree with Ross. If you own DCE, I would actually hold. I mean, if you scored 260s and it's, I wouldn't be unhappy with 260s the way the game's going at the moment. And I think that with the draw that they've got coming up, that can only get better. So, I mean, but that's we all have different ideas and different perspectives. That's just my perspective. But the interesting ones for me was at 5'8". So interesting, a lot of people have got Amon and they've got Hastings. For me, I think Amon's actually got a really hard draw, and I think you could find yourself with some pretty low scores, and Hastings obviously been knocked out. But the two I want to go against are Brown versus Munster, and everyone seems to be on the Munster train, and they've missed Brown. And they probably look at the scores that Brown got in the first game where he got 23. He was moved to the centre wing when Arthur was in the side. But his base is 42. That's pretty solid. You know what I mean? Eels are just quietly churning along, and Brown's just quietly churning along with him. You know, Munster scored every 70-something, was it, with a try. And so if you own Brown, I would hold. If you own Amon and you're struggling and you can't get up to Munster, Brown's a pretty good trade up for mine.
Yeah, so if you can't get the cash to get to Munster, I like Brown a lot. Having that solid base this year, I think is the key. I think we've already touched on it before, where we always talk about ceiling versus base, and I think this year base is winning. So
he was the first fullback I picked, and I can't see him leaving my team. I think he'll stay in there basically all year. He's a great backup, but when he's got his ball in hand, he can just do some amazing things. And we've all talked about the Eels' draw. Unfortunately, it hasn't panned out as magical as we thought it might. But they're still on a good thing. And, I'm all over Brown.
I'll just mention something on Walker too. So I said to Dan, don't start him. And I mean, it's different people did. And I saw the enticement of doing it round one. But for me, Walker was always going to have a tough start. But I think that Walker is someone I would be very interested in come round 4 or 5. That draw for them.
I do apologise there, guys. I feel like we've had some technical issues there and we've lost everyone on the podcast. So I don't want you guys missing out on our information that we've got. So I'm going to continue on as much as I can. So I'm just trying to pick up where we left off. I'm going to say I think we're in the pods in the halfback position, and I think one thing that surprised me actually was Toby Sexton's 4.4% ownership. I think he's definitely a decent option if you've got some underperforming halves in there that potentially is only at 4.4% ownership, and he could really make a bit of cash there. He's kicking goals. He's looking the goods. The other one there might be a bit more further out there, more of a big balls option would be Dearden. He's looking quite well, actually. He's only owned by 2.6% of coaches, so he's looking quite good, but I think it's he's in a very downside team. I just don't see him keeping it up very well, but at the moment he's proven pretty good there. Quickly, we'll just move on to the centre wing, and I'm just going to talk about the centre wings that I really think are decent options, whether they're going to be cash cows or pods or guns. We'll start off with one here. This guy fit 2 categories here. He's Dane Gagai at 599k. He's actually a pod owned by 3.2% of coaches, and also looking like it might make some cash there. His break even is 70. The number that surprised me here really was that his base was at 40, which is pretty solid. He's always had a pretty good base, so I really like Gagai. If you can fork up some, maybe you could look at getting some extra cash and going as Stags up to Gagai. It could be a decent option. Another big risky one though, because the draw does close up a little bit for him there, so might not be as good as potentially looking at someone that might make a bit more money for more long term. The other option here people are looking at, a lot of people trading this guy in, is Peter Hiku. He's at 360k. His break even is minus 21. He has looked pretty good in the first 2 games, but like I said before with Dearden, the draw has been pretty good for them. I don't see Hiku. He'll make a bit of cash, maybe 100k the next 2 weeks. My tip would be, if you do get him in, I reckon you probably only have him for about 2, maybe 3 weeks, and have a plan to get out. If he makes that 100k for you, that gives you a 450 to upgrade to someone else. But also surprisingly here, his bases are at 37 as well. So I do, it is definitely an option there, but and everyone seems to be going that way. But I'm actually steering clear. One of my favourites actually, it was my pod that I called out earlier before our pre-season pods, and that's Campbell Graham. He's priced at 494k. His break even is 23, and his base is 41. In a team that hasn't been performing very well, I really appreciate when you get someone that's showing some consistency there, and he's been looking really good. I'm kicking myself I didn't go for him myself. I do like Campbell Graham. It's just a lot of people steer clear because they tend to stick to the left side. And I'm not sure about you, but I've been watching those South games pretty closely, and the left side hasn't been working as well as it has in the past. I think that Cody's been doing a little bit more work, having to rely on Ilias, but I think he's doing a bit more work and struggling to actually perform at a higher level. Next up, another one that I'm pretty keen on here is Braden Burns at 439k. He's a big pilot, owned by 0.4% of coaches, a break even of 4%. I really like Burns. The only problem with Burns is he's extremely injury prone. I've been burnt more than one occasion by bringing in Burns, and it's hurt a lot. But he has solid base, especially playing in the centres. He does a really good job there for you. It is definitely a risky move though if you don't want to be stuck with another injury. We already have COVID to deal with. Another injury wouldn't be very helpful there. Another one here that surprised me as well was Corey Oates at 345,000 with a negative break even of -11. The Broncos are looking pretty good. I find this year, I just don't know how long it'll stay. But I think at the price at 345, it's easy to upgrade one of your dud cheapies that you may have picked up. Someone like maybe a Cobbo or even I don't believe in selling him, but Billy Smith, for example, a lot of people are keen on selling him. I don't think Billy Smith is a sell. But yeah, I think Oates is definitely a little out there option there. There's a couple more centre wings, but I won't talk too long on them because there's a few out there that have already been spoken about in another podcast. We're going to look now into the fullback position, so this shouldn't take too long. Looking at a couple of different options here, we're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fullbacks. So decent options here. Walsh, I really like the look of him. The issue there isn't a downside team. They can attack, and he still managed to get 76 points in the last game. The good thing about Walsh is you've got another week to look at him before his price changes. The other issue there is with Brown coaching. I'm not sure about Ash Taylor. I know Ash Taylor was either injured or dropped. I'm not sure what the word is there. But if he has been dropped, I'm pretty concerned about what Brown's doing with the halves, whether he's rotating the halves on matchup, and that's just could be lead to disaster when it comes to how the halves and how the spine actually works. Next up, we have Gutho. He's owned by 5.9% of coaches. You'll pay $6.55 for him, but he's averaging 60.5 for the year, which is pretty solid. And we kind of expected this with his opening draw. They haven't seemed to kick on like we thought they would have with the opening draw. One thing that surprised me about Para in particular is they're usually a good defensive side. However, I've noticed that this year they are definitely struggling by keeping the points out. But their attack is still there, and Gutho definitely leads the way there. So if you're not happy with, say, a Teddy or even a Puppy or a Turbo, Gutho is not a bad shout. Potentially wait on because they've got a pretty hard game this week, and then it opens up again. So they're playing against Melbourne this week. So maybe hold off on Gutho for now, but then he has a pretty good one after that. Next is Pappenhausen. A bit underwhelming, I guess, but still pumping out 61s. And at this point, I'd take a 61 at the way the game's been run these days. He's 694,000. I think a lot of people already have him. So if you have him, please hold. Don't sell him to get someone like a Gutho in there. I think he's definitely worth a hold. And then we have Teddy at 760. I think obviously Teddy was pretty underwhelming in game one, but I think the Roosters have turned a page. I know it's only one game where they just tend to turn up a bit better last week, and watching them play the halves and even the whole spine really was a lot better than what it was in the first game. I don't think Robbo likes to, the coach, I don't think he likes to have a losing team, and I think he really, really put it into and made them work hard for it this week, and I just see more and more good things coming from the Roosters this year. So I reckon Teddy is just going to get better and better, so definitely hold on to him as well. I'll talk about one more before we get to the big one. Surprising one here is Will Kennedy was a sneaky little pod owned by 1.5% of coaches. You'd pay $568K for him. He's averaging 70.5, so he's the second highest averaging fullback at the moment, behind Nico Hines. I know we've already spoken about him in the half position there, But yeah, averaging 70.5, second highest fullback average. This may change though. I know the Sharks have a bit up and down draw, so maybe definitely a watch for him. But I think there's too many other options out there to begin with anyway. I think if you haven't got Puppy, Chetty, Turbo, and even to a lesser extent maybe a Gutho and then Walsh, I think Kennedy's a stay away. But he definitely, I think Kennedy's a really, really good option for draft, but definitely probably, I'd probably stay away from him when it comes to Classic. And the big one here, I don't have him, and I know a lot of people that do have him, and they're torn whether they should sell or not. Turbo at 1.25 million, currently averaging 50.5. One thing I will say is I'm an advocate for trying to stick to your game plan at the start of the year. You probably didn't expect it to be this low, averaging 50.5 in the first two games, but you weren't expecting a lot of points from him in the first two games against two quality defensive sides. And your plan was to hold him. Honestly, he's going to be one of the best fullbacks at the end of the year. I just can't see the point in selling him unless it's to bolster up the rest of your side. If you have no other issues in your side, please just keep him. There's people out there like me that haven't got him that will death ride him, and I was one last week and I was so glad he did poorly. But having Turbo in a team against mine is one of the scariest things I could possibly see, and it was just the amount of people selling him. You can't lose cash if you don't sell him. I think if you kept him all year, you'd be happy. And he's playing against the Bulldogs, and like I said before, everyone knows that at the start of the year they had the two hard matchups, and they were going to go into a Bulldogs game. I know the Bulldogs haven't been as bad as what we thought they would be defensively, but I just see Turbo opening him up. If I had him, I'd keep him, and I'd probably put the C on him as well this week. So that pretty much wraps it up on our positional analysis. So we'll talk about trade talks. I know I can't talk about the guys, what they're going to trade, because we've lost them, unfortunately. But my initial plan was to trade out both Fafita and Angus and Cody Walker, and using the trade boost. And then I was going to bring in Munster, Olakawatu, and Isaiah Yeo. I've since decided to change my mind on that. I would have. That was going to work out well for me because I would have had 400k left in the bank, which means I could have upgraded Sam Walker next week to Cleary, or the week after to Cleary when he gets back. I decided against that. I think that the draw opening up for both Angus and also for Fafita is going to be so hard to watch without him. I personally think, just like Turbo, that Angus and Fifi should be the two best second rowers in the game come the end of the year. So like I said, I can't lose cash if I don't trade them out. So instead, I'm definitely going to trade out Cody Walker and Munster. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on the Roosters team list and whether Angus gets named, stays on the bench, or whether he comes in for Tupanua. I'm still probably going to keep Angus, but I'm looking at potentially just bolstering up my cash cow. So one player that I haven't got is Josh King. I've got the other King, and he's doing really well for me, making good money. I haven't got Josh King. And the other option I was thinking of was Leo Thompson as well. Leo Thompson could be another option. So instead of bolstering up my points, I'm looking at bolstering up some cash, because I feel like my points will come eventually, and I need to build up that bankroll because I think it's going to be very important at this time of the year. So that's what I'm doing there. So you're definitely going to go Cody to Munster, and the rest is going to be up for grabs. I might even hold off on any other trades, and hopefully that'll really help put me forward for. I think saving 3 trades in the first 2 rounds is pretty important. On to VC and C. I'm torn with my VC. I'm trying to stick strong to my decision that I'm making this week by keeping Sam Walker. So I feel like I'm going to put the VC on Sam Walker and just hope he does me justice, because he did look a lot better last week. It's either that or it's going to be Teddy as VC. I think they're going to have a pretty good game. After watching them last week, they've improved so much from the week before, and I think they're just going to go better and better. And then I'm looking at Cameron Munster as my captain, which is pretty the way the game's been going at the moment. I think it's very safe to captain someone like a Haas or a Yo or someone that has solid base. But I really like Munster, and I feel like I reckon I'll be happy to get a 60 as a captain when my first few weeks round out. But I really like Munster, so I'm hoping that he can do a decent score, like give me a bit of a pod captain move there. And that's pretty much wraps it up for the rest of this podcast, guys. Once again, I apologise for everyone getting knocked off, some technical issues. But we'll catch you again next week, and I hope you guys have a good week. And I hope let's all forget week 1 and week 2.
I want to win. I want that trophy. Throw it up! Throw it up! Throw it up! I want that trophy.